All right, we are live. Hope everyone is doing well today. I am here with the Oracle of London. Alexander, how are things in London?
Well, hot, sweltering, and angry, I think, is perhaps the
Okay,
expression that I would come up with. I mean, it's incredibly hot weather, but the political mood is bad. And I think it's fair to say that the sort of social mood is pretty bad as well. And again, I live in a quiet area of London, but I noticed helicopters, police helicopters flying over my home last night. Monitoring the area, which is
hmm.
it does happen from time to time, but it's a bit disturbing when it does.
All right, and we have a very special guest joining us today.
Okay.
We have Ania from the YouTube channel Through the Eyes of. I will put a link to that channel down below. Ania is joining us from Poland, and it is a fantastic YouTube channel. It is in the description box. I will also pin it in the comments section when the video is over as well. And Ania also has a fantastic locals community page, and she has written many, many books. Ania, thank you for joining us. Where can people find you?
Thank you so much, Alex. First of all, thank you for invitation, and it's true honor. I mean it to be here with you. People can find me. My website is aniak44, ANIAK44. All the links actually you can see underneath my videos on my channel. So easy to find. 3 books, 2 for children, by the way, Alexander, and one one is a novel. So yes. In Instagram as well. My travels, which is a huge passion of mine, find me on Instagram.
All right, so I will put all those links, those additional links. I will also put them in the description box, and I will pin as many of those links in the comments down below. Welcome everybody who is watching us from Rumble, from Odyssey, from the Duran.locals.com, from Telegram. Definitely check out our Telegram channel, and everyone on the YouTube chat as well. And let's see who is moderating real quick and say a quick hello to our moderators. Who do we have with us today on this live stream? Let me just do a quick scroll through, and then I'm going to pass it off to you, Alexander, because we have a lot of stuff to discuss regarding the general collapse that is happening in Europe and all over the world, it seems. And you know what, guys? I don't see anyone moderating, so it looks like it's just me. I'm sure some other people will be joining us. So, Alexander, Ania, let's get into it. I pass it off to you, Alexander, and let's talk about the times we live in. What do you think, Alexander?
Well, we live in extraordinary times. We live in very disturbing and interesting times, and of course, we are living. I'm right. I'm speaking to you from London, which is, of course, at the western edge of Europe. And of course, Ania is talking to us from Poland, which is in the East Central Europe, but it's now gradually becoming, I think, perhaps without fully understanding the implications of that, but it's becoming a frontline state, which is a disturbing thing, I think, for any country to be. And I think one of the things I'd say about Poland has done in so many ways so well in the last 30 years. I mean, I can remember the sort of terrible period of economic turmoil in the 1980s when, the communist system was sort of breaking down in Poland. And it looked as if at that time the Polish economy was almost beyond repair. And then things began to happen in the 1990s. There was this extraordinary economic upswing. There seemed to be a kind of social upswing as well. Poland integrated itself with the Western institutions. It was time to be very optimistic about Poland, and optimistic for a very long time. And one senses that just as here in Western Europe, we're being dragged down by our own follies, Poland is also now finding itself tied into a kind of system which is pulling everybody down, if you will. And I think a lot of us didn't quite understand. I think a lot of people in the West didn't quite understand that globalization, which I think a lot of people in the West thought that they controlled, actually means linkages which, when they start to break down, are very difficult and bad for everyone, for us in the West too. It didn't put us as much in control of things as we imagined. And I think a lot of people in the West assumed at the beginning of the latest crisis, when it started in February, if we imposed sanctions on the Russians, it would be an economic house of cards there, the famous gas station masquerading as a country and all that. And of course, it's turned out that the sanctions are having a very bad effect in Europe, Western Europe, certainly. And Ania, I don't know what's happening in Poland economically. I mean, we were hearing lots about the Polish economic boom, that things were, getting. I mean, one of the things that was really remarkable, for example, was that at the time of the 2008 crisis, that Poland came through that so much better than so many of the more established economies did. But one gets the sense that Poland is now under a lot of pressure as well, that the economic situation is coming off. It's no longer as good. And of course, you're getting the spill from the crisis. You're becoming again, a transit corridor for refugees. And they're not just passing through. Some of them are staying. So what is the general mood and what's the general situation in Poland now?
So I have so much to tell you on this, Alexander, but before we start, I want to say something, and this is thanks to Alex. I'm repeating after the Ukraine defense minister that English is not my native language. So if I make any mistake or if I jinx any facts, just remember that English is not my native language. That's first. Second is this. I happen to have a quite interesting life, meaning I actually grew up in the communist Poland. So I remember the situation when it was 1981. I remember the Chernobyl explosion. I remember the change of the system. Now, this is quite questionable how this system really has changed. The more we go into it, what took place at those round table negotiations, right, in 1989. So there is a lot to it. But what I'm trying to say is I have witnessed the change of this country. And that is also one more thing, very important. I think your viewers will appreciate, by the way, you have incredible audience. And I just want to say, I'm really in awe of the level of consciousness, awareness, knowledge of the people who are watching your channel, because I can see this through the live chats and comments and just incredible people. But going back to what I was saying, I have spent the last 17 years in United States. And why this is important? Because I grew up with politics at the table, Polish tables, like you have probably in Greece, conversations, politics. So I was a child, I was hearing a lot of things, what's going on. But then I pushed those politics aside and I was in US. The last 3 years, I would say, really made me focus what's happening in the world, what's going on, what they are trying to do. And in that time, Poland has changed a lot. Since I left Poland, I was coming to visit, I could see the changes. Even last year, before the special military operation, I remember coming here and the feeling of the country, how I felt. I'm very energy sensitive. I could feel how I just felt good. I was proud of Poland. I could see how beautiful it is. Of course, there are people who struggle, but overall was different energy than especially was in March when I came back. I came back right at the same day, can you believe this, when Kamala was placing a visit. And yes, I was in Warsaw. I saw them driving to the presidential palace and I said, oh my goodness, I have to watch this speech in English and in Polish because I actually understand. So the situation in Poland has changed drastically since the intervention has started. If you would like me to tell you how many refugees have entered Poland so far, how many left, I can tell you because I actually got those numbers here, if that will be helpful. So
it will be very helpful.
All right, and again, it's questionable because we don't really know those statistics. One more thing, side note, there was, I don't know if I should use the word scandal or I don't know the word. Let's say there were Ukrainian and Polish, both border officers involved in allowing the man that is in the military, in this group of, when they require to military in Ukraine, they were allowing them to enter Poland, just not for free, let's say this way, okay? So we had a lot of those young men, a lot, guys. Like my town, we will get to my town. I have a lot to tell you. My town is on the very, very west side of Poland. I will get into it, but let's focus on refugees. Because of this, at first, we haven't experienced that many here, but I went to Krakow, which is south, much closer to the Ukrainian border, and they have been already a lot of refugees in that time. It was like March, April. Now, how many entered? Let me tell you where I have this. It's right here. 4, is it? Oh no, one second. I have like all the numbers about Polish call and everything. So you can ask me. 4,090,000 refugees entered Poland since February 24th. 4 million refugees. So far, I think about 1.98 million left. Again, this is very questionable because some of them are registered here to receive financial support. So they kind of go and come back. So again, you don't know. Now, daily, just yesterday alone, today is what, 19th? Yesterday was 18th. Just yesterday alone, 24.3 thousand have entered, okay? I can tell you what Polish government has done in the beginning. They have provided free transportation, free medical care. They had, I think privilege is the right word to use. Let's say applying to schools or medical care, they were like first, like a VIP service, let's say, which was getting, very hard, especially for the older citizens. There was another thing. When Ukrainian refugee entered, they received from Polish government like a welcome support, let's say, which is 300 zloty. I didn't exchange this rate, but I exchanged something important too. Each one of those people who had children received 500 zloty plus, which is around $109 per child. I want to give the viewers a point of reference because the pension for those people in Poland, Polish citizens who have already retired and spent majority of their lives working and paying taxes, the pension is around from $260 to $370. So they can calculate. Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm just.
No, I think you're answering it very clearly. I mean, these numbers are staggering. I mean, they're extraordinary. I mean, given that, can I just say we had, we've all known about, the problems with inflows of people into the United States, and there was talk about building walls and all those sort of things. We had, by the way, a major problem in Britain. It was one of the things that caused issues over Brexit. We had people coming from Eastern Europe, people coming from Poland, people coming from the Commonwealth countries, all of that. Those figures, which were so politically sensitive in Britain and which are so politically sensitive in the United States, they pale by comparison with what we're hearing in Poland today. All of this massive onrush. And can you remind me what the total population of Poland is?
I don't know exactly, Alexander.
It's about 40 million?
Approximately. This is the thing with migration. Yeah, around 40 million people.
Yeah, I mean, and you have 4 million people passing through, and a very large proportion of these people staying, and of course getting these enormous benefits, these enormous social benefits, which must be acting as a huge drain on Polish government finances, and at the same time are causing enormous stresses in the health system, the social security system, all of these things. What are people in Poland saying about this? I mean, is this creating resentments? Is this causing social tensions?
I'm so glad you asked this question because, again, this is very complex. And as everything, so is the political situation with governments is very psychological, a little bit slow motion response, but there is. And I tell you what it is. At first, there was this enormous sense of compassion in people to open their homes, to take someone who is running away from the war. However, many of those who were actually entering from the western part of Ukraine, which was not affected by any military operation. They were from other sides, but a big group of those people, and they have big number again. Was let's put this way, was not poor. Okay, was not poor. And how you see the car, you see the plates, you see the outfits, designer all over from head to toe, okay? So this is one aspect. So after that kind of settled, let's say, the psychological issues between the people started to become more obvious. And here what is very important, because you mentioned this very often on your channel, on the Duran, and both of your own channels, especially Alex talks about it too. There's a certain attitude that Elensky has, for example, that people are observing, very, the sense of, I have trouble pronouncing this word, the entitlement, like, I want it, give it to me, give it to me. I need this. And what have been more noticed in Poland lately, especially, is escalating. This is the type of mentality. I'm not saying by all means in all of them. So I just want to state it. This is not about everyone, but there is a big portion of that population that has a certain approach of being demanding and being difficult, okay? For free. Now, that thing for free that they were provided has ended, as I believe, on June 1st. So I think no more free transportation and those kind of things. Therefore, maybe there's more of them leaving. Overall, people are slowly, let's say, I try to be diplomatic, not as compassionate as they used to be in the beginning.
They're becoming more resentful. How did this happen? Was this because Polish society rose up when there was the war and they said, we must help these people, we must help Ukraine? Or was it because Poland sees itself as a loyal ally of the West? The government maybe has its own interests in what goes on in Ukraine. In other words, did it come from below, this desire to throw open doors, to provide all this help? Because the generosity is astonishing.
Yes.
Or was it passed down from above, with everybody invited to participate because the leadership, the government, the European Union, the United States, NATO, they all wanted Poland to fulfill this very generous role? Or was it a combination of the two?
It was more human to human everyday reaction, like we say, when the rubber hits the road. And I came across really many, not only videos on YouTube in Polish, of course, right? So I was listening to those people who were describing their story of how they were helping and what they received as thank you. So that's one aspect. But also, wherever I go, because I think this is like in my blood right now, I just cannot stop talking about those things. So I talk to people, that actually I'm blessed to have those very great people in my life that I can talk about, but then even service people, like you go to get some service from different places, and people are sharing the story, what happened in their neighborhood, because there are still a lot of people living there. So that change of approach came from the real life situations, Alexander, if this helps you. And of course, when people, I'm certain about it, when people started to see the numbers, and then you look at my heart breaks when I see the older population in Poland, and I'm not saying everyone, but there's a big number of those people who really are financially struggling, and then it's like government is not helping those people when they are barely surviving. And, a friend of mine was trying to offer to pay for some, medical for the pills or something like that in the store, and they have dignity, like they refuse, but they count every single zloty. And imagine, like, the proportion of this is just outrageous. It's crazy.
Can I just say something? Because we have a complete reversal now. Now, it's only a few months ago, it seems like another age, that there was this crisis on the border with Belarus, with people coming from, I think it was the Middle East
Yes.
mainly, and trying to enter Poland. And there was, as I remember, vitriolic criticism of Poland and of the
I
Polish
remember.
government in the West. And of course, previously, when there was when Angela Merkel invited millions of people to come from all sorts of places, so, we can do it, open the doors of the European Union without any kind of consultation. The Polish government was extremely critical. It said it made it very, very clear that we are not going to participate in this. And again, they came in for vitriolic criticism. And now we have this complete, total
Yep.
reversal. And by the way, what is very remarkable, what's extraordinary, is that whereas Poland got all this huge criticism before, what you are describing, to my knowledge, is almost unknown in the rest of the West. At least in Britain, I mean, we don't hear about Polish society receiving these people in this scale. It's not something that you read about every day, you hear about every day. As I said, numbers of people coming in on a scale that we would never experience in Britain. So is this something that people in Poland have noticed, that this complete criticism of Poland before, and this indifference perhaps now, when Poland is doing, from the point of view of some people in the West, the right thing, but perhaps it's just taken for granted that it should be doing this?
So as I see this, I truly do. I see like there are two different realities almost coexisting at the same time. One is the reality that is, let's say, their idea, which means we will recruit certain influencers, celebrities, etc., to have a certain narrative going, right? So we will bombard with the accounts, with flags, etc., etc., etc. And then we have the citizens, the regular people, nothing less, by all means, actually, sometimes, most of the time, much higher level, right? But those people are experiencing a different reality because they are dealing with certain effects of that. So I would say this, Alexander. When I came here, and again, it's interesting that this is amazing. Like, you are so knowledgeable about what was taking place, because I remember coming to Poland from US, and I remember that situation with Belarus, we say, on the border. And I remember they were so against, and everyone is like, why they are not allowing them to enter? And then I came exactly, like I said, when Kamala came and then Biden came. That's another story. I don't even want to. So I remember the flags were everywhere. Ukrainian flags in the beginning were everywhere, to the point that a lot of Polish people were saying, but excuse me, actually this office, this institution, this is Polish institution, okay? We are in Poland, everyone. Hello. So it was very extreme. Now you see very randomly, I still do, but I have to tell you, and you know this, very recently, a few days ago, there was the anniversary of the massacre in Wołyń, right?
Yeah.
And this is very difficult subject for both sides, especially now. And what I decided to do, especially in the light of that anniversary, I said, you know what? YouTube channel is one thing, but how you really get the feedback from the real people, you go and you look into the comments, right? So I went and I checked the comments, and I checked on several channels, and even some other places. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is that I saw the awareness and disapproval that was so clear of certain things, and I said, oh my gosh, they are finally opening their eyes.
Yeah.
They are.
Well,
so
that's interesting, because I have to say something actually about that, and I'm glad you brought up that massacre and
Yeah.
the experience of the war, because Once upon a time, not so very long ago, it was something that, was widely commented upon and discussed in the West. And we knew very much about these auxiliary battalions. I have to choose my words extremely carefully, as you can imagine. But it was absolutely routine history about the Second World War, about who was doing various things, particularly in Poland, who was where the guards of many of the camps in Poland came from, for example, and what some of these people did to Poles. And so some of the rhetoric that they used about Poles was, now in the West, we are required to forget all of that. You can't talk about it anymore. It's become almost an impossible subject. If you go to our newspapers in Britain, that's never raised in any kind of way anymore. But all right, in Britain, we are very far away from these events. In Poland, this is part of your history. This is part of the single biggest event, perhaps, in your recent history, what happened during the 1940s. And again, it seems extraordinary that you have Ukrainian flags displacing Polish flags in a country like Poland, and that it's only taken a while, at least for me, for all these memories to be revived. And again, why is this so? Is it because the Polish government doesn't want you to talk about these things? Is it because the media doesn't want you to talk about these things? I say this because this is the life experience of so many people in Poland, if not directly, at least from their families, from their parents, from their grandparents, from people like that.
It's a very deep question, and I will answer to the best of my ability how I personally perceive it. So, first of all, I remember my grandmother, who, by the way, was born in Prussia when Poland didn't exist, 1903. And she was always telling me about be careful with Ukrainians. Now, why I'm saying this, I want to really emphasize, and I really hope the audience will honor this, what I will say, because I don't want anyone to get an impression that I dislike or condemn the nation. It's not the point. There are a lot of Ukrainians who actually came to Poland, let's say, when the war has really started, okay? So we're talking 2014, a lot. And those, I tell you, Alexander, honestly, so incredible, hardworking people. Many of them are still working in the same places, literally. So it's incredible people. And so what I'm trying to say, this is not for everyone, okay, my comments. However, there is a big portion of those refugees that behave certain way. Now, going back to your question, I grew up, I love history, by the way, and actually, to be honest, I had to relearn. I had two different history books that were rewritten. So let's say I learned one thing, and then a few years later at school, they told me, forget that book. This is the right history now, okay? Which again is not fully honest. So I think the key point is here. We have to relearn the history from the scratch. It's manipulated. It's many lies, because like they say, the winner writes the history, right? The history books. So what I think happened is, after Soviet Union at the time took care of those events taking place that happened, like in Wołyń, those people were sent to Siberia, okay, let's say. And after that, they actually went back to Poland and they created certain organizations. So this is so their presence was relocated. So let's put it this way. I'm not saying everyone. The same what happened with Argentina, and I'm not going to use the N word, but we know what we are talking about.
Yeah.
So what I think it is right now, Alexander, coming from many years spent in United States, which is very important because of this. And last year's, I really understand more American politics, especially the election day, what was taking place. I was watching this very closely, and what really explains this to me is when I see majority, maybe not, I don't know the number of Polish citizens who still look up to United States, maybe as I used to look to some extent 17 years ago. And this is where the problem lies, because there's a certain formula of thinking, of certain belief systems. That is the schooling system, that is the programming, Alexander. What can I tell you? That is the programming. So because of that, they are for that, but they are not trying to have diplomatic, healthy relationships with all the neighbors, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's entirely correct. Can I ask about the economic situation? Of course, in Britain and in so many other places now, we have recessions. We have also inflation. We have a cost of living crisis. You were talking about the very difficult condition of pensioners. And of course, we're having the same experiences in Britain, in many places. Poland, we've always been told, and I think this is absolutely unequivocally true, by the way, was the great economic success story of the post-Cold War era. What is the situation now? I mean, is this, are you also being struck by this inflation crisis that we have elsewhere?
Okay, so I have to admit, for some reason, I don't have the latest inflation numbers with me. It's very high inflation. The highest, I forgot, is it in 30 years or something like that? That gives you, I mean, you can look it up. That gives you, again, what you see when you're looking up is not necessarily the reality. The price on the product is the reality, right? So that's how you see the percentage. But I can tell you something that is quite shocking, and this is not illusion. There is an electric company in Poland. The main company, its strange name is PGNiG, and they actually announced a few days ago, and I said this on my YouTube channel, that Poland is to expect the electricity bills to rise 300% this coming fall winter. 300. And I wasn't sure, so I looked a few times, and it was actually showing up this number. You know, okay, gas prices up, everything up. There's one factor that many people don't often consider, which is compare the average salary of the citizen to the rising price. Because the average salary in UK or Norway or Switzerland or anywhere else in Europe is very different than in Poland, okay? And then if you see one of the highest gas prices in Poland, then you know that overall for Europe, this is the most expensive gas in comparison to the salary. So, and this is not the end, we know, right? This is gonna continue. It's gonna continue. So that's how it is.
I mean, how does the government justify all of this? And I say this because my own understanding of law and justice is that you can make all kinds of criticisms of it. But I mean, you know, ultimately, its primary appeal was precisely that it looked after people, that it looked after, you know, well, I mean, you know, maybe this is all more, you know, rhetoric and, you know, public relations. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been to Poland for a long time. But the point I'm trying to make is this. It always struck me that their pitch was that they were a family-oriented, socially oriented party, that they would support living standards, particularly of people in the sort of lower, you know, socioeconomic percentiles. Now, we had, by the way, a flash. Somebody said 16% inflation in Poland. Now,
which is like 32.
Which is like 32. I mean, does it not occur to them? Does this not worry them that their pitch is so completely contrary to the you know the outcomes?
So again, Alexander, I was out of this for a long time.
Yeah.
All I heard, which is not new to Polish people, was always complaints. You know, they have this one in government, they complain. They have another one, they complain. Kind of like French do, right? You know, complain. I don't know, mentality. Exhausting mentality in that regard. But anyway, so at the end of the day, even if it's Prawo i Sprawiedliwość, law and order, right? Or Platforma Obywatelska, I don't know how to translate the other one, which Tusk, welcome to Brussels, by the way, good money, who used to be the leader. I don't know if he is, I don't even follow this. My point is this, looking at all of this, and I said it, I don't know if they're gonna come after me, they all gotta go. I'm sorry. They all gotta go. This is not for the citizens, and this is not what they are doing. I see more and more people, they are not agreeing with this. However, it's not everyone is verbalizing like I am their true opinion about this. And I honestly think with your prediction, guys, and watching what we are watching in the world right now with governments, I think before this year ends, Morawiecki will be gone. I don't know about the president. And actually, I have a few things to tell you about Polish coal, which is because come on, Polish coal, we all know, right? So I have some numbers, but with this is answering your question. I mean, I haven't come across anyone who said I love law and order. So I don't know. I'm not like the statistic master, but
no. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing that we have right across the whole of Europe, is that we have a political class in which, of course, we have parties that essentially you change one, you get the other, and it's all turns out essentially the same, because we have what you might call the European mainstream, which is marginalizing or tries to push everything to the corners. Now, what I would say about it is this, though. I mean, in a country like Britain, we have a very, very stable political system. It's been like this for a very, very long time. We've had these two parties, Labour and Conservative. They've been around for a very, very long time. They have their roots in the 19th century. The Conservatives claim even deeper roots. It's very difficult to break through. Do you think in Poland it might happen? I mean, after all, you've had a history in Poland, if I can put it like this. Not necessarily. I don't want to call about political instability, because I don't think this is true, but I mean, Polish people have shown an ability to, push back, to change things dramatically. They did it, of course, in the 1980s. They did. I mean, I remember that time. I was raising funds for Solidarność at that time in, my university in London. All kinds of things like that. And if you go back further in Polish history, you see lots of, willingness on the part of Polish people to break with the established power. Is this likely to happen today? Do you think that this is something that could happen in Poland?
Everything you said is absolutely true. And there is, you see, on my channel, and I this is important as answering your question, my channel is a little bit eclectic, because I think we cannot look at the current or historical events from a very narrow perspective. There is also a spiritual aspect to it, okay? And that spiritual aspect, that spirit in people, is crucial in times like this. And there is something about Polish spirit throughout the history that when the moment comes, when they are absolutely pushed to the wall, I believe in this very much, in spite of a big number of population being brainwashed again. This is the westernized ideology. I believe in the Polish spirit that people gather, come together, they unite, and it doesn't have to take everyone. This is the thing what people sometimes get discouraged. They think, this percent has to be on this side. It's not, it's the pureness of energy and intention and the willingness of changing and standing for the truth and standing for the right thing. And I believe that ultimately that will win, Alexander. Yes, it's different country now. And I see it because even like the mines in Poland, I remember the miners were incredible power. They had the voice in Poland when I was growing up, and now they closed actually written down like 20. Did they close 23? If I make mistake, excuse me, forgive me. But the point is that I believe in Polish spirit. No matter what, I still believe in Polish spirit. And when it comes, I don't know how far they have to be pushed, but
yeah. Can I also say what I know of Polish literature confirms completely what you say. I mean, I'm not perhaps as well versed with Polish literature as I should be, because my experience of it, which is limited and obviously in translation, I've been enormously impressed by what I've seen. But that spirit that you talk about is, you know, echoes through that literature in very, very powerful and resonant ways. And I would also say something else, by the way, in brief, which is, of course, we have a lot of Polish people in Britain, of, you know, doing various things. And my impression is that educational levels in Poland are still very high, certainly by comparison with what you would find in you know, most West European countries, and that's being generous to the West European countries, actually. So I agree with that. Now, can we actually talk about the coal? Because, of course, a lot of people. Well, maybe let's get your statistics first, because I was very interested with what you just said about, you know, the role of coal miners, because, you know, this is something where we have certain parallels in Britain. But let's get your statistics first.
Can I ask you here? So, is it the same in Britain as far as their saying, the importance of their saying? You mean miners specifically, right?
Absolutely, miners played an absolutely critical role in the formation of the British Labour movement and in British society right up until the 1980s. And I'm going to be straightforward here, as straightforward as I can, which is that I have to say that I've often thought that one of the reasons why we hear so much about, you know, the kind of things that we need to do to save the environment and to close down all the coal mines is because those miners in Britain had a cultural and historical and political importance, which was very, very inimical to the political powers, not just the political powers, you know, on the Conservative side, but to the power of the Labour Party. And if you look at the 2019 election, one of the most interesting things was that the coal mining areas voted overwhelmingly Conservative and voted previously overwhelmingly Brexit. And of course, it was a repudiation of the party, the Labour Party, which they had founded. And of course, that was partly, I am sure, a bitter sense about the fact that the Labour Party had turned its back on the miners, turned its back on the coal industry, denigrated everything that they had stood for, everything that they had once represented in Britain.
So you just reminded me, I don't know when this memory came from, but you just reminded me about a holiday that was when I was growing up, Alexander. I remember in December, forgot the date, I think it was the 8th of December, there is a date of the Saint Barbara, I believe, who is a patron of miners. That's like a tradition. And I remember I was actually at school and we were dressing up, you know, in a certain costumes with those black hats. And so there was, why I'm saying this, there was a level of celebration. It was a tradition for us when I was a child. And now, again, I have some numbers. I don't know exactly how many mines still exist, if it's 4 or if it's more. But let's talk about the recent act that Duda signed into law, apparently. That's what I came across. So I'm trying to explain this with my English to the best of my ability. But what it is this. He signed an act that that the coal depots, the places that sell coal, would sell the coal to the people for 900 zloty. And giving you the reference, which is $195. Okay, so he signed it. When they sell the coal, 1 ton, you pay $195, approximately 900 zloty. When the current price of the coal is around $600, which is 2,800 zloty. Now, what the government suggested to do with the difference that the place who is selling is losing on, that they're gonna refund this 1,900 whatever in about 9 months or so. So pretty much it's like give it, and it's not giving for free, but it's like enormous loss in the beginning, right up front. Now, there is another information I came across. When is this? This is very interesting. Here, okay. So that Poland apparently, again, I'm learning all of this. I had no information, no knowledge about it. I was just not looking into this. Apparently, Poland has the coal in the land that will last for 500 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are resources. What I'm trying to say, it's not like Poland doesn't have coal. Yes, there is plenty. It's just how you use it and how you manage this. So here they are saying that the government says that Poland doesn't have more coal. Therefore, Morawiecki, here we go, gave the decision, decided to purchase, Alexander, purchase coal in the amount of 4.5 million tons. Okay, so, and one more news, everyone. Again, talking to people. So a friend of mine told me this. Sanctions. Seriously? Sanctions? Are you kidding? So we are going from, we going from Colombia to Turkey, and there is coal, which is Russian coal.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is exactly what it is.
Fact.
Yeah. This is exactly correct. This is, I mean, the sanctions, and I just, as I say this in parenthesis, have created and are creating a whole network of middlemen and corruption, which is on a staggering basis. And of course, all this is going on at the same time as domestic coal industries are being completely run down. And we see this in Germany, where, the great coal basins in the Ruhr have been closed. Poland, as you absolutely rightly say, has all the, the coal that it needs to keep itself going for 500 years. Britain had a lot of coal, but of course we can't have that anymore. We've got to have other energies, other fuels, except of course, in practice, what we're doing is we're buying Russian coal and we're pretending it's coming from Colombia. that is the actual reality. Are people, from the coal mining regions as angry about this as people are in Britain? I mean, that there was this huge sense of resentment amongst these communities that we see in Britain. Do you have this in Poland?
To be honest, I don't know if they even know what's going on, or if they even... I think it's a lot of ignorance, Alexander. Yeah. I think a lot of people, and this is what this life of consumption did to people. It's very narrow-minded. It's me, myself, and I, and not thinking strategically, not having an awareness. Oh, I don't care about politics. And I was that. I mean, not like extremely, but I was that. Oh no, this is like low energy, don't talk to me about it. But it's so important to have an awareness what's going on, because this is the life not just of yours but of your children. And I mean, you have to think forward, and this is the problem with people. I think they really don't. It's very, like this in US, this instant gratification thing. It's exactly what it is.
It's exactly what it is. Yeah.
I don't know why they don't stand up, like why they don't protest. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying like peacefully, okay? I mean peacefully, but I don't know, because this is, look at those people who actually make a living. So there are two sides to it. So one side is like they're gonna lose, but then you have the side when that person who actually told me that the friend's husband is dealing with coal and he's making enormous deals because of those shenanigans, Colombia, Turkey. So he's making a lot of money. So like someone is losing, someone is gaining. It's
Yeah, except of course the losers are much more than the winners. But you're absolutely right. The consumption culture has had a very, very effect of depoliticizing people to a very, very great degree. You see this in every country where it's been happened. Shall we talk a bit about foreign policy? Because you made a very, very important and very, I think, interesting point about Poland needing to have different policies, or at least rethinking to some extent its policies towards its neighbors. And when we did our previous program, in which you so generously hosted us, I think I made an observation, which is that I think Poland greatly underestimates its importance, its ability to shape events in Europe because of its location, because of its cultural depth, but that it's playing a poor game. What is the feeling? Because one gets the sense that Poland is now on bad terms with Germany. It's on terrible terms with Russia. I don't know what its relations with the Baltic states are. I get the sense that they're both friendly and rivalrous at the same time. At least that's my own sense. It's managed to, its relationship with Hungary, which used to be very good, is now not quite so good anymore. And of course, with the European Union, it's got all kinds of issues in which, by the way, my sympathies are with Poland, not with the European Union. But anyway, is there a rethink in Poland about its foreign policy options? I mean, and what do you feel might be a better foreign policy for Poland? And is this a topic that is discussed there? This is a big question. It's a sort of multi-part question. But
yes, my
brain is
already going.
Going. Okay. I mean, first of all, is there a debate about foreign policy in Poland? Maybe that's the first place to start. I mean, do people talk about foreign policy, or is it that they're just afraid of Russia, that that this is the only thing that they're thinking about at the moment? And can I just say, Poles have very good historic reasons to be concerned and afraid of Russia, and one has to acknowledge that. That has to be a starting point of every discussion. But is there a debate about foreign policy in Poland, or is it just a sterile one? Let's be close to the European Union, or let's try and keep our distance. What is there a debate at all?
So, I would say this, and again, I'm not someone who is savvy in politics. This is just from my observations and from more getting like a social feedback as much as I can from people who live here, or from observing, because honestly on YouTube, I can see what topics are running, what people are talking about from different angles, right? But what I want to say is this, even recently, look at this. They were poking Germany about tanks. They were poking Norway about money from selling oil, was it, or gas? I forget. They are just, it's very chaotic how I see this. One thing is for sure, Russia bad, Ukraine good. And how I see this overall, Alexander, and I tell you, and this is thanks of my living in US. This is totally America good.
Yeah.
Again, not everyone. There is a big portion of people in Poland that have an awareness. However, I think where the problem lies is this. There is something like cognitive dissonance, I think you say, when people don't want to face the truth. And even if you would provide them with the documentaries, what was taking place, let's say this way, they are not for so many refugees, let's put this way, but they are, you have to make Russia pay, okay? So because they first of all, they don't even open up. Let's be natural and just listen. Someone will present you certain evidence. You will look into it, and then you will make up your mind. I think the problem is there is this wall, this blockage, because like, no, like I already know. And I think this is the problem that, again, not everyone, but still I think a very big part of, it's very complex. I don't know how to answer this. In my personal opinion, what I think every country, this is just how I feel. I think every country should focus on their strengths, on their resources, on their uniqueness, and strengthen this, nurture this, protect this, and as much as you can share, to trade and exchange to their ability. That's how I see it. I see the beauty of the diversity and collaboration. You know, when I go to England, I love England, by the way. When I go to England, I want to feel like I'm in England. When I go to other countries, I want to feel like I'm in other countries. I don't want to feel like I am in the same everywhere. And that's, I don't know if this answers, but I think that this needs, from the spiritual standpoint, people need a lot of healing. And I'm not saying Russia didn't commit certain crimes historically, Soviet Union. Of course, I mean, we know the history is very heavy. It's very heavy, many dark moments. Pretty much, if you look at the European history, like it's so many darkness there in that history. So every country has something, like, you know, you say behind the collar, we say. And the thing is that, I mean, let's put it this way. NATO has a lot of saying. Okay, that's how I see it.
I mean, can I just say, talking about dark pages in your history, I mean, the British have a great many, except of course they've hidden away their history. I mean, you don't speak about this very much in Britain. I mean, our role, for example, the British role during the Empire, is not one that is much talked about or commented upon in Britain, especially not amongst the sort of political class. But what you've just described, and by the way, I'm completely with you with this, you know, that each country should be itself, each country should play to its own strengths, that we want diversity, we want, you know, if you like, sovereignty and independence. We need to be free in ourselves so that we can be different, and that kind of diversity is good. But of course, that's exactly the opposite of what we're getting today. I mean, the European Union is. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm something a bit like a broken record here, but it absolutely hates that kind of diversity. It wants every country to be. What it wants is a kind of homogenized Europe, which is totally antithetical to the image that you've described. Now, I do get the sense that many people in Poland understand that, but do they not perhaps realize that by playing the role they're playing in this particular crisis, they are strengthening those forces within the European Union, who are the greatest advocates of this kind of homogenization that we're talking about?
Well, actually, just something came to my mind on that point. Okay. Why many people, what I'm hearing coming across, still approve of European Union, and this might sound like a very strange comment, but is European Union is good. And I'm just saying straight because that's how I understand this. Because they've built the highways since European Union we joined, because they, put money into this, into that. And I said to myself, but don't you understand that money was there before? It was just corrupted and stolen. And I mean, still is. Let's just different zip codes, right? But you cannot say that. Okay, so who paid for this? Greece? Who paid for this? Cyprus?
Well,
I mean, people don't have, first of all, common sense is not so common. And then the knowledge is the power, so not much knowledge, and just logic, some logic. And how, so I will stay in European Union because we have amazing highway that takes me from, let's say, Warsaw to Kraków or whatever. But at the same time, our farmers will have to get rid of this. And what I'm trying to say, I don't think people have, I don't have full understanding, but I have a fraction, and that fraction is enough for me to, is enough for me to see what is going on.
I'm going to say straight away that in Greece we went through the same pattern. I also grew up in Greece at a time of dictatorship. But it was very brief. It was only a few years, and I was only there for a very short time, and I was a very little child. But I left Greece in the 60s. I only went back once. I made one trip to Greece in the 1970s.
Wow! Why,
in
Alexander?
The
Can I ask you?
Because I had, well, I will say straight away, there were events that happened in my early childhood in Greece during that time, which were very traumatic and which made me nervous about going back to Greece. So I went back to Greece once in the mid-70s, and it was still the country of my childhood. And then I came back to Greece in the late 80s, and it was transformed. And it was, what had changed was that we joined the European Union. It was exactly what you said. We had the roads, we had the all these things that had suddenly
appeared.
The
flags, right? We have
the flags,
we have
absolutely.
the statues.
And you know, it looked as if the place was booming. And of course, this boom went on for a very, very long time. And then, of course, it all became very clear that the boom itself was built on sand, because it also exacerbated corruption problems in Greece, which of course were always there, but it made them much, much worse. And then, of course, on top of all of that, we discovered that there was a very, very, very big price to pay, because, of course, the money that the European Union had invested in Greece was not for free. It came with some very tough conditions. And I'm not just talking about economic conditions, but of course it did buy within Greece a client base, which we still have, and which remains very vocal and very powerful, and which controls the media in Greece. I mean, it's the public voice, because it controls the media. And I'm wondering about, I was going to ask you about the media in Poland, because I get the sense it's partly the same too, that the diversity of opinions in Poland are not reflected in the Polish media, about which I know very little, by the way. But I get the sense that it's a very sort of narrow type of media that you have in Poland that doesn't reflect, the diversity of views of the Polish people, which is a shame, because in communist times you had, of course, the official media, which nobody believed.
Two channels.
So 2 channels, which nobody believed, but you had an enormous, and I remember it, an absolutely enormous alternative underground media, which people were, of course, familiar
finding
with.
way to, yes, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So is there anything like this in Poland today? Do you have a sort of very restricted media? And is there any kind of alternative media in Poland, given that the history of developing that previously did exist?
So let me say this first. I don't own a TV set deliberately by choice since I think more than 12 years. I don't. Wherever I go and live, TV is not on my list of objects to purchase. Everything I need to find, I find. iPhone, computer, I'm good. But what I came across is this. Therefore, Alexander, I'm not watching Polish media at all. But I come across this. How to say, I understand from what I was coming across that the first channel is called Telewizja Polska, which is Polish television #1, which is the first channel. The one that used to be the Polish Communist Party that was programming, they had the sessions and, So the same channel now is actually, and again, it's not exactly the same channel, but channel #1 is pro law and order. That's what I understand from what I'm coming across, like on YouTube. There is enormous level of suppressing the truth, so nothing new, like I saw it in US, the same thing. So the pressure on those who actually say how things are is heavy. Okay, I know that there are other channels that are more on on the other side. So they are promoting the other side. So this division is division on television. That's what. But I don't watch. I don't watch. I don't want to watch. Yeah, let's say this way.
No. Do you have an alternative media? Do you have a social media world in Poland? I mean,
There's yes.
Yeah.
There are certain channels on YouTube, for example, that I watch. Incredible people, very committed. They are doing a lot of research, bringing it on. Just by the way, one person has had 2 channels just removed recently. One of those channels, I think he had for like 13 years or so. They were without any like Alex situation, without any of this just gone, like poof.
Yeah.
No longer there. So he started a new one, and of course some portion came joining, but he's incredible, and he first of all shows people not only in Poland, like really shows what's going on. He shows also in Ukraine. He shows the footages, military situation. And now, if I don't see the chat, but if anyone would like to know, I'm actually going to post this on my community page. So you can, if you speak Polish, I don't think he has subtitles in English, but if you speak Polish, go and check it out, because kudos to that person. Like, so much research and hard work. But besides that, I mean, you know how it is, Alexander. They suppress. So it's a very small, you find a way. If you want to find a way, you find a way. But it's not, you know, they don't bombard you with this like they do with other things.
What is the channel's name, Anya? People are curious. Just
Okay, this is Polish name.
in Polish, yeah, in Polish, yeah.
Maciej Maciak. But it's also a little bit hard to find because it's not as established now, since it's brand new. So I might send you the link, and I might post it on my community page as well. All in Polish, legit information, literally showing in Ukraine the weapons, everything.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
great.
Oh, somebody just put it up. I think Matt's here. I'm not
Maciej Maciak,
pronounce.
yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Ania, before we wrap up, there's a question which, of course, I have to ask, which is, what is the position of the church in Poland today? I mean, again, in the time when I was raising money for Solidarność, it was, you know, this tower, there's a huge force in Polish life. By the way, in Greece also, the church was historically a very, very important institution, very bound up with the lives of Greek people. It was just as I think for many people in Poland, you know, you had an attachment to your church. We had an attachment to our church in Greece. What is the situation today?
This is a very difficult question for me to answer, especially personally. And the reason for it is this. Because I was coming across, and this is not conspiracy, I was coming across so many disturbing informations about what church has been and still is involved into, yes, including Vatican, everyone. It's very hard, and yes, I know we had Polish Pope, like who could forget, but my point is it's a very sensitive subject, and I know there are many people who still believe that everyone there is just perfect. They are all humans, and some of them are good, and some, like we actually talked to Alex about this, some of them are good, some of them are not, like everywhere else. Their involvement with this, I cannot answer this because I separated myself. I don't support anything that brings suffering, and I've seen a lot of suffering there. I'm not saying Jesus and God. I'm saying certain organizations that are run certain way. That's why I don't know if I can answer this question. It's hard.
I understand it. I completely understand. I completely respect, and I think we can understand it. Now, I've been speaking for an hour. Alex, who has been much missed, we've had lots of people sending comments. Alex, welcome you back. Perhaps, I mean, do you have anything you'd like to discuss? Bring up with Ania? Yeah.
First of all, thank you, everybody. Thank you very, very, very much for all the support. But Ania, I've got a question. Do people in Poland, are they aware of how close to war they are with Russia? And the second part of my question is, do people in Poland believe that they could perhaps engage in a conflict with Russia because
Mhm.
of the media misinformation, which portrays Russia as kind of bumbling and stumbling along this conflict in Ukraine? Has it given the people in Poland a false sense of confidence for them to say, okay, law, law and justice, absolutely go in, take Western Ukraine, or let's get engaged in Ukraine because Putin is not doing so well, and I think that along with NATO, we can probably win this. Is there that sense, or are people in Poland more grounded in reality and kind of saying, "Look, we'll only go this far. We don't want to get engaged in a war because it's not going to end well for us if we do enter Ukraine." I mean, what's your sense of things?
So the answer is yes and yes. This is, I think, what is really very sad for me and very difficult to observe, that because of, again, what has been presented in the media, and again, that I would say this, that tension of how possible it is, I see that is changing. Okay, so it's like the rubber thing, like maybe yes, maybe no, but is somewhere there possible what Russia might attack us. And where I'm going with this is what I said before, because people either don't want to see the truth, or when they don't want to look for it, or they are not accepting it. And this is coming from someone, and again, there is an awareness that's created that Russia might do the same to Poland as it did to Ukraine. Why I'm saying this is because, of course, I came across a lot of those informations lately, especially, and with the moves that they are doing with NATO bases. We are all aware. But I sat back and I said to myself, if someone like me, who grew up in Poland in communism, who was forced to study Russian, who had some kind of dislike to Russia in the beginning because of that pressure overall, because of being forced at school to go and watch how Russia liberated us, the movies. So I was like, Russia brainwash. I would be the first person to say, bleep Russia. But when I started to come across, and again, I didn't have that, because I realized, oh my goodness, the same, and I know not everyone pro-Trump, that's fine. But what I realized, they are doing the same to Putin, what they were doing to Trump. I mean, end of story. So one person is bad, everyone else is good. Everyone is fantastic. And I said, this can't be, it just can't be what's really going on there. And a lot of people I know, a lot of people have awareness, but there's a big part of Poland that is still like, Russia is danger, Alex. And that's the problem, if this answers your question. I think that is the problem, the approach to it. But Russia bad, but Russia did this in that year, but Russia did. I mean, I'm not saying the history wasn't there. I'm just saying people still perceive Russia to some extent as a still Soviet Union. That's what's the problem.
Right. Do you have time for a couple more questions for both of you?
I
5,
do.
10 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We're talking about social collapse. So, Alexander, Anya, do you guys have a sense of a feeling that Europe has kind of crossed the Rubicon, that there's no way to stop this collapse that's coming?
Yes.
Nothing can stop
Nothing.
what's coming.
Yeah.
Nothing. That's it.
I mean, it would require a level of a quality of political leadership, which is simply not available. I mean, it's not going to be produced. The political system itself cannot produce the kind of leadership that would needed to turn things around. If it tried, if somebody like that were to emerge, the forces that are pushing us further in that kind of direction are so strong now that they would destroy that person before. So I mean, we're heading in that direction now, and it's irreversible. It's unstoppable.
Or creating a war to such an extent
Yeah.
that it will sustain those in power to be there just because of dealing with that war. That's the only option. But I don't manifest that. I see fall like domino, and financially, that's the whole situation. When, like many times you say, when people hit the bottom.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting question. I don't know if you guys can answer it from Jennifer. Reading the book Olga Tokaretsu's latest book, Tokarczuk. Very long book, 991 pages. But here's the question that I want to ask you. From Olga's book, it leads me to believe that Polish people hate Americans. Do you get that sense?
Some do. But just look at some do. But just look at the I can't even, guys. When Biden visited Poland and that speech in Warsaw, I was literally, I'm sorry, I was suffering watching this. I'm like, you don't who went there and who's clapping? I'm like, who is clapping? That was so hard for me because I just came from US and I'm like, this is the point of reference. People don't really know how American citizens, yes, majority, hello, no, he didn't win, I said it, how they approve of him and her. I mean, we have 12 circles that cannot be filled up with, voters campaign. My point is, they don't like America, but there's still this part that is like, oh, America, I love United States. I love people from United States. I might come back, who knows? For now, no, thank you. It's very dangerous. It's not safe overall because of what they have done to the country with enormous potential, deliberately destroying the country. So a lot of people don't like America, but there is a lot of people who still think, oh, even when I talk like, oh, you used to live in US, wow. And I said, yes, but it's different reality now, it's everyone is suffering, okay, as not everyone, but a lot of people are suffering there as much as they are doing in Europe. I mean, look at the gas prices.
Yeah.
It's anyway, I'm sorry, I'm just like go and ramble and
We'll give a couple more questions, 2 more minutes, and we'll wrap it up. All the questions that we can't get to, what we'll do is we'll do a dedicated video as we always do, and we'll answer all those questions in detail. And questions that are addressed towards Ania, I will pass them off to Ania, and Ania may want to answer those questions in a format that she sees fit. So here's an interesting question to just wrap it up, and it comes from Dan, and I like this question because I think it kind of gets to the heart of the matter. Alexander, Ania, will Europeans ever stop voting for their own enslavement?
May they change the machine. No more machines, please. And if they use, let them be certified. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Well, I take the point entirely, and I think this is absolutely right. I mean, the fundamental point is, wherever you go now, anywhere in Europe, you find dissatisfaction, you find anger, you find protest, and I suspect a critical mass of people in Europe are very opposed to what is being done, but they can't find a political vehicle or an electoral vehicle to make that work, and that's very dangerous, actually. But that's the problem. So it's not a question of people voting. It's just a question of that vote becoming meaningful. I mean, we went through all that enormous battle to get Brexit done in Britain. And already we see how it's being eroded, for example. And this creates disillusionment and bitterness. By the way, I just wanted to say very quickly, and in parenthesis, that for the first time ever, to my knowledge, a British Prime Minister in the House of Commons yesterday used in a completely routine way, as if its existence was an unchallenged truth, the expression deep state. He actually referred to the fact. Yeah, Boris Johnson actually referred
game changer. This is game
to
changer.
the fact that there is a deep state in Britain. And it it attracted very little attention. The conservative benches applauded him.
They applauded Alexander. There is some
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah.
No, but
So
can
there
I
you go.
just say, don't you think, Alexander and Alex, that the reason is not just who supposed to be gone, but is and then what? Do the countries have this and then what? What is the vision? What they want? And right? Don't you think? Like you have in UK now, and what? And what?
This
Now what?
this is exactly the problem. This is exactly what the problem is, because we are at that point at the moment when we have we've reached a point where the present is intolerable, but we have no alternative to put in its place, and you have lots of people, intellectuals and people like that, coming up with ideas, but at the moment we don't have any. Certainly in Britain we don't. I mean, Corbynism attempted to kind of revive 1960s, 1950s, and 1960s social democracy with, I have to say it straightforwardly, a sort of woke, colouring. But I mean, it was at least an attempt to create an alternative. It wasn't perhaps a very convincing one. And at the moment, you just don't have that to any real degree, at least in Britain. And I suspect this is true in much of Europe as well.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask one question? Is there anyone watching me who is Polish or from Poland? Because I don't see the chat. If you can tell me. Okay, great. I just want to.
That's the sense that I'm getting.
Yeah.
That's
the sense that I'm getting.
Yeah.
Actually, here's a question for you.
And people who are Polish or of Polish origin, but who live in other countries.
Yeah.
Yes. So I just want to say this is my personal opinion, and I respect everyone's opinion. So do not hate.
No. Rafik actually wants to know, can you ask Ania if she has ever heard of Dr. E. Michael Jones and his book Libido Dominandi, Sexual Liberation and Political Control? He gave a speech in Poland several years ago.
No.
Okay. There's also a lot of questions, Ania, Alexander, about Poland's relationship, Poland, Russia, and Latvia, that relationship, and Poland, Russia, Lithuania. I don't know. Do you? And we'll answer these questions in more detail on a dedicated show. Do you have any comments about
I don't know the dynamics.
Yeah.
No, I cannot.
Yes, I mean, I think if we're going to go into the history, that is a vast topic, which would take up a huge amount of time.
Yes,
go into
the
Commonwealth, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and all of that.
We were united and we were fighting in Grunwald. It was just anniversary. What was it? 1410, which, by the way, I'm going on a trip like this week. We're very close there to this field. Yes. But we are talking, 600 years ago, Polish and Lithuanians, one army. That's all I know, and I cannot say more.
Yeah. Okay, this is again the Teutonic Knights. I think it's the Teutonic Knights. Is this right? That you fought the Teutonic Knights, isn't that right?
Correct.
But anyway, all right. This is a gigantic topic which needs some research from us, and we can start looking into that, and we can talk about the Baltic states and Poland and all the rest.
Okay, Yo says, my father was born in Poland. He used to say, "Who that is a donkey will eat straw." Very, very well said. Very well said.
Okay, I have to say this before. Can I, Alex, please allow me to say this? Because Alexander will love this too. So, you know where I was born and where I am right now? My town is the town where Catherine the Great was born. We still have the building here where she was born, and I written down the year, was it 1729? And her father was the officer who was in charge of the region of that Prussia, which was called Stettin. So she was born here, and the first years of her life she spent here, and there is still a very well maintained building. I go to the restaurant often that is nearby, beautiful square, and she was born here. So I just want to say that.
This is very moving, actually, because of course Catherine the Great and Poland. It's a very complicated. Well, it's not complicated. It's a very, very tragic story for the Polish people.
It is actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's the period of the partitions and of Suvorov and.
But Alexander, she apparently loved Russia, and she wasn't originally Russian, and then her husband, who was Russian, hated Russia.
Yeah, it's true.
How interesting is this?
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah. Mhm.
Final question, and we'll wrap it up. And it comes from our friend Sanjeva, who says, "It's awesome to have Anya on the Duran.
Thank
Hope
you.
she keeps coming back." By the way, did you notice Indian media, even the ones owned by Anglo Indians,
Yes, I
turning
watch.
empathetic, sympathetic to the Russian perspective?
I think
I
this is a
watch.
trend. Yeah. Go on,
Empathetic,
Anya,
sorry,
Anya.
sympathetic, not empathetic. Sympathetic is what Sanjeva
But
meant.
they
Anya.
flip flop, guys. They flip flop. I'm sorry. It depends
Yeah.
on the news. Like Bucha, totally flip, and then flop again. So I'm like,
Yeah.
what's who's paying the bill now? It's yeah, I don't know. It's but I do watch. I do watch. There are certain people that I watch on India, the Indian news as well.
Yeah.
Alexander, any final thoughts on India? We should probably do a dedicated show
We
as
should
well.
indeed. We
I think
should.
it's
We should
the
absolutely.
big
I
swing
think
player there.
it is
Yeah.
the big swing player, and it's understanding this, and it's so far, it's playing this with great skill because, of course, it does, but it doesn't speak. It doesn't make rhetorical poses. It doesn't have, coming along and say, well, the Russians are absolutely in the right or the Americans are absolutely in the right. It's maneuvering. The big question is how long will India be able to keep this very careful balance and maneuvers without overplaying its hand? Because it's a pretty sophisticated game that India has been playing. It's been playing to its advantage, and it further confirms that this is a country that is on its way up. At least that's what I think.
Can I just say
Okay.
here?
Yeah.
Can I? Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
taking
absolutely.
over your show. No, please. No,
No,
but
please.
what I found lately interesting. There's the Arctic Council, right? Which countries are part of, and Russia is actually now, like, let's say, in charge. I don't know the right word, but they rotate every 2 years or so. So India, I mean, where is Arctic? Where is India? India is actually an observer. So they are like, they have some saying in the Arctic Council. So that's very interesting, this dynamic, because that region is so important. I just advise everyone watching, look up the Arctic situation. There's a lot of things people don't know about going on there. It's very important region in the world, very.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. The reason it's happening, despite India not being anywhere close to the Arctic, is because everybody wants them to be on their side. So nobody's prepared to say no to India. Come along and say, we want to be an observer on the Arctic Council. And everybody, Americans, the Russians, the Chinese, they say, yeah, please join. Now, can I just say, in a different kind of way, in terms of Europe, this is the point I was making about Poland's position being stronger than it realizes. I think Poland could play that kind of game too. It has that, has that potential to do it. It's not using it to the extent that it could do.
Yeah, and Sanjeva's following up saying Alexander will attest to this. Indian media is owned by pro-American Anglo-Indians, especially the English-speaking media. It's not a good barometer for the general consensus, but clearly the trend is towards pro-Russia.
And that is absolutely correct. And can I just say, I mean, there's this big community, business community, and especially Mumbai, as I understand it, which is extremely pro-American and has wanted to tilt India towards the US because it thinks the US is the place that's, the dynamic engineering and technological place. But again, I get the sense that even amongst those people, the lure of the US has started to fade a little over the last few years.
Fantastic. Balke says, listening with bated breath. I didn't know Anya, but her presentation of the Polish situation is hugely intense.
Thank you.
Intense and immensely informative and insightful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Can I just say how nervous I was to join Alex and Alexander? Like, please, I was so nervous. But yes, I hope I just expressed my opinion well enough for you to understand.
It was a fantastic show, Julia. The Latvian Parliament to dismantle the monument to the soldiers of the Red Army. Julia, we're going to get to those topics in a dedicated video. A lot of good questions. We're going to have a really good dedicated video, Alexander, to these questions.
We
and any questions which I missed, which were addressed to Anya, I will definitely pass them off to Ania as well, and she will have those questions to answer as well. Ania, once again, where can people find you?
So my YouTube channel is Through the Eyes of, which I am blessed to have Alex and Alexander at once visit my channel as well. Very eclectic, so just saying up front, there are some spiritual topics and a little travel, but conversations with guests like the Duran as well. And my website is aniak44.com, so you can find all the links there. Rumble, Aniak44, ANIAK 44. I just started locals, and this is thanks to you. You inspired me. And yeah, I think in Instagram, everything you find under my videos pretty much. So
I will have everything in the description box down below, and then I will put everything, all those links, as much of those links as I can, as a pinned comment.
Thank you.
Down below. Thank you to everyone who tuned in this afternoon
so
to
much.
watch this live stream. Thank you to our moderators, Reckless Abandon, GEC, Zariel. Who else was
Where is
moderating
Lady
this?
Cosmica? She is the powerhouse.
I don't know where Lady Cosmica is, or who else? I think I saw Alan Watson there as well, but maybe not. I'm not sure. Let me do a quick check just to make sure I didn't miss any moderators. I think I got our moderators. Thank you very much to our moderators. Thank you to everyone that watched us on Rumble. Definitely look for us on Rumble. On Odyssey, look for us on Odyssey, and on Telegram, and on the Duran.locals.com, and for everyone that tuned in on YouTube. And please look up our channels on the alternative media platforms, because you just never, ever know. And final thoughts, Ania, Alexander, before we sign off?
No, I think this has been a wonderful program, and I would just say thank you very much, Ania, for coming on. Please don't feel nervous. On the contrary, you've got. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, if anybody should feel nervous, such an erudite guest, it should be us.
Alexander, you have more people watching live stream than Biden, himself. So, so please, yes.
I don't know. Is that a compliment or? Is
it's a major compliment. The live stream, seriously, and the comments are always turned off. Yes. By the way, thank you. I am beyond grateful, and I tell you, I am in a way addicted, which I'm healing that a little lately, to both of you. And I know that many of the viewers are. So there was this enormous suffering with Alex's absence, which you could still find him. And actually, can I just say, Alex, your videos on Rumble, top notch, no filter, funny, on point. So again, I think you don't really know what you have until it's gone, and then you start to appreciate. So let's appreciate these two gentlemen for all this commitment and really hard work. And I'm so grateful that you exist, both of you. So thank you so much from me.
Thank you, Ania.
Thank you for this warm words,
everybody.
Ania. Let's definitely do our programs again, both us on your channel and you on ours.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Constanza, for that super chat as well. Things to remember: Bakshinsky, he is a Marxist revisionist. He is interested in power only. He does not care about economics. He does not understand it.
This is Mr. Kaczynski, the deputy prime minister.
Kaczynski!
Well.
Oh my goodness! That actually, can I just say before we go?
Yeah.
Becoming more and more and more irrelevant in the party. They pushing. So it's the games within the party. That's what I'm coming to understand lately. I mean, major games, what they are doing.
Palace intrigue. All right, everybody, take care.